Part 1: The Unexpected Conversation. Nema sat curled up on the couch. A soft blanket draped over her legs, the faint sound of rain tapping against the windows. Seattle evenings had a way of slowing life down, making every moment feel calm and ordinary. Daniel sat across from her, holding his cup of coffee, his gaze fixed on the swirling steam as though he was searching for courage inside it. Something about his silence made Emma uneasy. Normally, he would fill the room with small talk, stories, from work or his endless jokes about their quirky neighbors, but tonight he seemed distant, heavy, as if a secret was weighing on him. She looked at him closely and asked, "Daniel, what's on your mind?" Her voice was gentle but laced with curiosity. He hesitated, his lips parting slightly, then closing again. It wasn't like him to struggle with words. Finally, he set the mug down and leaned forward, his hands clasped together. "Emma," he said slowly, "I've been thinking about us, about our marriage." Her heart skipped. She braced herself, wondering if something was wrong, if maybe he had been holding back feelings of frustration or disappointment. Then came the words that made her world tilt. "What if we tried couple swapping?" Emma froze, her eyes widening. For a moment, she thought she had misheard him. The idea sounded so far from the man she knew, the man who once left roses on her car in college, the man who still warmed her side of the bed when she came home late from work. The word swapping echoed in her head, sharp and foreign. She searched his face for signs of humor, some hint that this was a joke. But there was no smile, no spark of mischief. His expression was serious, almost nervous. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Why would you even suggest that?" Daniel looked away as if unable to meet her eyes. "I just thought, maybe it could bring excitement, maybe shake things up. We've been together for years, and sometimes I wonder if we've fallen into a routine." Emma's chest tightened. She felt a storm rising inside her. Was he saying their love was not enough anymore? Was she not enough? She wanted to argue, to shout, but the words tangled inside her throat. Instead, she just stared at him, her silence heavy and trembling. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. He seemed to sense the distance growing between them. "It's not that I'm unhappy," he added quickly. "I just thought it might help us feel alive again." Emma finally found her voice, though it shook with emotion. "Help us, or hurt us forever." The room felt colder, the rain outside louder. She wrapped the blanket tighter around her, not for warmth, but for protection. The man she trusted most had just introduced an idea that felt like a crack in the foundation of their marriage. Daniel reached for her hand, but she pulled back, unable to let him touch her just then. The rejection stung him, and his eyes flickered with regret. Yet he said nothing more. The silence stretched, filling the room like an invisible wall between them. Emma's mind spun with questions. Was Daniel secretly dissatisfied all this time? Did he think she wasn't enough to keep him happy? Or was this just a reckless thought he would regret tomorrow? Her lips trembled as she finally whispered, "Daniel, I don't even know who you are right now." The words slipped out before she could stop them, but once spoken, they carried the weight of her hurt. Daniel lowered his head, his shoulders sagging as though he had broken something precious. That night, Emma lay in bed with her back turned to him, staring at the dark ceiling. She could hear his breathing beside her, steady but restless. Every inhale, every exhale reminded her of the distance that had suddenly grown between them. She wanted to reach for him, to ask him to take it all back, but pride and pain held her still. Her thoughts circled endlessly. Why would he say that? Am I not enough? Has he been thinking about this for a long time? The questions pressed against her chest, heavy and unrelenting. Daniel shifted behind her, as if searching for comfort in the silence, but neither of them spoke. The room that once felt like a safe haven now felt like unfamiliar ground. Emma closed her eyes, wishing the night would end, wishing the morning sun could erase his words. But she knew, deep down, nothing would ever feel quite the same again. That was the night everything changed. Part 2, the growing distance the next morning. Emma moved through the house like a shadow. She poured coffee, buttered toast, and pretended everything was normal, but her chest felt heavy. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, scrolling on his phone, smiling faintly at something he read, acting as though the night before had never happened. He kissed her cheek before leaving for work, the same way he always did. But to Emma, the kiss felt hollow. She stood by the window after he left, watching the rain slide down the glass. The world outside looked the same: neighbors, walking dogs, cars rushing by, but inside her, everything was different. His suggestion had carved a space of doubt, and she couldn't stop replaying his words. Couple swapping, excitement, routine. It was as if he had held a mirror to their marriage. And for the first time, she wasn't sure she liked what she saw. At work, Emma found it impossible to focus. She sat in front of her computer, staring at emails without reading them. Her mind wandered back to their years together, how he used to bring her coffee during late study nights in college, how they had danced barefoot in their first apartment, how nervous he had been the day he proposed. They had built a life from love, not experiments. So why now? After everything, did he feel something was missing? Her colleague Sarah noticed her distraction. "You look far away today, Emma. Something wrong?" Sarah asked, leaning on her desk with a kind smile. Emma forced a small laugh. "Just marriage stuff. You know how it is." She didn't dare explain further. The thought of speaking the words out loud, "My husband suggested couple swapping," felt like ripping open a wound. Was too raw, too personal. That evening when Emma returned home, Daniel greeted her with his usual warmth. He asked about her day, offered to make dinner, even cracked a joke about their neighbor's constant lawn mowing. He was trying, she could see that, but every word he spoke was colored by the memory of his suggestion. His laughter sounded different. His touch felt uncertain. And when he reached for her hand at the dinner table, she hesitated just long enough for him to notice. The pause made his smile falter. He quickly shifted the conversation to the weather, pretending not to feel the rejection, but the damage was done. Emma's hesitation told him everything trust was slipping, and she wasn't ready to let him back in. Later that night, they sat together on the couch watching a show. Normally, Emma would rest her head on his shoulder, but she kept a small gap between them. Daniel noticed, and the way his jaw tightened showed he understood. He didn't push, didn't ask, but the silence grew louder. Finally, Emma turned to him. Her voice was steady but soft. "Daniel, do you still love me the way you used to? Is this your way of saying you don't?" His eyes widened, and for a moment he looked hurt. But then he lowered his gaze, staring at his hands. The silence that followed was worse than any answer he could have given. It told Emma everything. She feared that, even if he loved her, something inside him was unsettled. Emma felt her chest ache. She wanted him to fight for her, to say the words, "I love you." Nothing has changed, but instead he just sat quietly, searching for something he couldn't find. The silence became its own confession. She stood and walked to the kitchen, pretending to get a glass of water, but really she just needed space to breathe. Her hands shook as she held the glass, the coolness grounding her as her thoughts spiraled. Maybe he's unhappy. Maybe he regrets marrying me. Maybe I'm not enough anymore. Daniel joined her a moment later, leaning against the counter. "Emma," he said softly, "I didn't mean to hurt you." She looked at him, tears brimming in her eyes. "But you did." He reached out, but she stepped back, not ready to be touched. He dropped his hand, his face filled with regret. "I was just thinking out loud. I didn't mean it the way it sounded." Emma shook her head. "But you thought it? That's enough." The distance between them wasn't just physical anymore, it was emotional, stretching like an invisible wall they couldn't climb. That night, they went to bed in silence, both lying awake, both wanting to speak, but too afraid of the answers. Over the following days, the distance grew. Emma noticed the small cracks in their routine, how he lingered longer on his phone, how she avoided his touch, how laughter no longer came as easily. They still shared meals, still went on walks, still lived side by side, but everything felt fragile, like glass ready to break. Emma began to question everything. She replayed their conversations, searched his face for signs of change, wondered if his heart was drifting somewhere she couldn't reach. Daniel, on the other hand, carried the weight of guilt. He wanted to fix things, but didn't know how. Every time he tried to lighten the mood, her guarded eyes reminded him of the pain he caused. One evening, as they sat in silence on the porch, Emma whispered, "I don't know if I can ever forget what you said." Daniel's head dropped, his hands tightening on his knees. "I wish I could take it back," he admitted. The honesty in his voice cracked something inside her. She didn't doubt his regret, but regret wasn't enough to heal the wound. Love was still there, deep and real, but so was doubt. And for the first time in their marriage, Emma wasn't sure which was stronger. The days turned into a week, and though life moved forward, our hearts felt stuck in that moment, the moment Daniel's words had changed everything. Part 3, A Confession and a Choice. A week later, the wait between Emma and Daniel had become unbearable. They moved around the house like polite strangers sharing meals, talking about grocery lists, discussing bills, but never touching the wound that lingered between them. Emma felt like she was living in a home that no longer belonged to her. Every time Daniel smiled, she wondered if it was real or just an attempt to hide what he was truly feeling. One Friday evening, Daniel came home earlier than usual. The rain had stopped, the sky painted with fading sunlight, but his face was pale, his eyes heavy with guilt. He found Emma in the living room, curled up with a book she hadn't really been reading. He stood there quietly, as though deciding whether to speak or walk away again. This time, he didn't walk away. "Emma," he began, his voice trembling, "we need to talk." She looked up, her heart racing. His tone was different tonight, softer, more desperate. She set the book aside, bracing herself. Daniel sat across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "I need to explain what I said that night. The truth is, it wasn't about excitement. It wasn't about wanting someone else. It was about me." Emma frowned, confusion flickering across her face. "About you?" He nodded, his eyes glistening. "I've been feeling insecure for months, maybe longer. I keep asking myself if I'm enough for you, if I've changed too much. If you might wake up one day and realize you deserve better. I didn't know how to tell you that, so instead, I blurted out something foolish. Something that hurt you." Emma's chest tightened. She had been blaming herself, wondering if she wasn't exciting or beautiful enough. But now she realized he had been carrying the same fear. The idea of couple swapping wasn't about desire, it was about his insecurity, its way of testing if she still wanted him. Her voice trembled as she asked, "You thought you weren't enough for me?" Daniel's shoulders sagged. "Yes, I watch you sometimes. How you laugh with your friends, how your eyes light up when you talk about work. And I wonder if I still make you feel that way. I thought maybe if we tried something drastic, it would prove I could still make you happy. But all I did was show you how weak my own heart was." Tears filled Emma's eyes. She had spent nights believing she wasn't enough. But all along, Daniel had been battling the same fear. It was heartbreaking and oddly comforting at the same time. "You are enough," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You've always been enough. But when you said that, it made me question everything. It hurt so much because I thought I wasn't enough for you." Daniel leaned closer, his hands trembling as he reached for hers. "Emma, I love you. I don't want anyone else. I just didn't know how to tell you I was scared." She let him take her hands, but her heart was still torn. She could feel his regret, his sincerity, but the wound wasn't healed yet. Trust, once broken, didn't return overnight. For a moment, silence filled the room. But it wasn't the cold silence of the past week. It was fragile, filled with unspoken emotions, both of them trying to find their way back to each other. Emma finally spoke, her voice steady. "I don't know if I can just forget this. It shook me, Daniel. It made me doubt us." Daniel nodded quickly. "I know, and I don't expect you to forget. But I'm asking, please don't give up on me. Don't give up on us." Her heart ached at the rawness in his tone. She could see he was scared of losing her, scared of admitting weakness. And in that moment, she realized that love wasn't just about joy and laughter. It was also about facing fears together, about admitting flaws, about choosing each other even when it wasn't easy. Still, a part of her hesitated. Could she truly move past the pain? Could she trust him again? She didn't know. But she knew she wasn't ready to walk away either. Emma took a deep breath. If we're going to move forward, we have to be honest. No more silence. No more secrets. You have to tell me when you're scared, not throw ideas at me that tear us apart. Daniel squeezed her hands. "I promise. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." His words carried hope, but Emma knew promises weren't enough. Healing would take time, patience, and effort from both of them. Yet for the first time since that night, she felt a spark of possibility. They sat there together, holding hands. Not as perfectly happy lovers, but as two flawed people willing to try again. It wasn't the resolution of a story yet, was the beginning of a harder, messier chapter, and though doubt still lingered, so did love. Emma could feel it in the way Daniel's hand trembled in hers, in the way his eyes searched her face like she was the only answer he needed. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight she knew one thing: she wasn't ready to give up. And neither was he. Part 4, rebuilding what was lost. The days after Daniel's confession felt different. The air in the house wasn't as heavy, though it wasn't light either. Emma still carried hurt, but now she also carried understanding. She finally knew why Daniel had said those words. And even if she couldn't erase them, she could see his fear for what it was. He wasn't trying to replace her. He was trying, in his own clumsy way, to hold on to her. One Saturday morning, Emma suggested something unexpected. "Maybe we should see a therapist." Her voice was calm, but her hands twisted nervously in her lap. She didn't know how Daniel would react. He looked at her with relief. "I was hoping you'd say that," he admitted. "I don't want us to keep stumbling in the dark." So they went. At first, sitting in that quiet office with soft lamps and gentle music felt strange. Neither of them was used to opening up to a stranger. But the therapist, a kind woman with silver hair and warm eyes, made them feel safe. She asked them questions they hadn't asked each other in years. When do you feel most connected? When do you feel most distant? What fears do you carry that your partner doesn't know about? Emma admitted she often feared being invisible. She told Daniel how she worried he might stop seeing her the way he once did, how his suggestion had confirmed her worst fear. Daniel listened with tears in his eyes, holding her words like something fragile. Daniel, in turn, confessed how much he worried about fading into the background of her life. He told Emma he sometimes felt she was stronger, brighter, more alive than him, and that he didn't know how to keep up. For the first time, they both saw each other's pain clearly. It wasn't about wanting something new. It was about both of them feeling afraid of losing the other. After therapy, they tried small steps. Emma left little notes in Daniel's work bag. Simple things like, "I'm proud of you," or "Can't wait for our walk tonight." Daniel surprised her by cooking dinner one evening. Candles lit, music playing softly in the background. It wasn't about grand gestures. It was about showing each other they still mattered. They started going for evening walks again, hand in hand, the city lights sparkling on the water. Sometimes they didn't even talk, just walked in silence, their steps in rhythm. Other times they shared memories, like the time they got lost on a road trip in Oregon, or when their kitchen flooded because Daniel forgot to turn off the tap. Those stories made them laugh, reminding them of the love woven into their history. Of course, not every day was easy. Some nights Emma would lie awake, replaying his words in her mind, and the doubt would creep back in. On those nights, instead of turning away, she would whisper, "Daniel, I need you to remind me you're here." And he would hold her close, whispering back, "I'm not going anywhere." One weekend, Emma planned a surprise trip to the coast. They drove for hours, the car filled with music and the scent of coffee. When they reached the ocean, the salty air wrapped around them, and Emma felt her heart loosen. They walked barefoot on the sand, the waves rushing in and out, erasing their footprints. It felt symbolic, like maybe the tide could wash away the hurt too. Daniel stopped and turned to her. His eyes searched hers with a depth she hadn't seen in weeks. Emma, I don't want any experiments, any what-ifs. I only want you, always. Her heart swelled, the sincerity in his voice filling the cracks inside her. She smiled softly, her eyes glistening. Then promise me something. If you ever feel afraid again, you'll talk to me. No more silence. No more running to ideas that could break us. I promise, he said without hesitation. The ocean roared in the background as they sealed the moment with a quiet embrace. No big speech, no dramatic endings, just a people holding on tighter than before. Back home, her life didn't magically become perfect, but it became real again. They cooked breakfast together, teased each other about who forgot the laundry, and even argued over silly things like what movie to watch. But beneath it all was a new kind of strength of choice to face things. Together instead of apart, Emma found herself smiling more. Not because everything was fixed, but because they were fighting for each other. And Daniel seemed lighter too, as though finally letting go of the fear that had been eating at him. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emma realized something important. Love wasn't about keeping things exciting all the time. It wasn't about being perfect or never feeling doubt. It was about choosing to stay, choosing to trust, choosing to rebuild even when it was hard. She glanced at Daniel, who was watching the sky with a peaceful look on his face. In that moment, she felt grateful, not just for him, but for the storm they had survived, because it had forced them to see each other more clearly, to speak truths they had hidden for too long. And though the wound had left a scar,